The lasagna was still in the oven when I realized she was lying. That's the part that keeps replaying in my head. It wasn't a text. It wasn't a voicemail or a lipstick-stained shirt. It was burnt cheese. That dumb, bubbling, half-frozen grocery store lasagna she said she'd just pop in real quick before heading to her meeting. She never turned the oven off. The kitchen smelled like charcoal and garlic regret. Smoke alarm was doing that half-hearted beep, like even it was tired of the excuses. I didn't even flinch. Just stood there with my hands in the sink, staring at the blackened edges like they held the answers. At 2:04 a.m., my phone lit up. Sorry, didn't notice how late it got. Be home soon, red heart. That stupid little heart. Like a Band-Aid on a bullet wound. I wiped my hands on the dish towel that still had spaghetti sauce from the night before and replied, "Is Trenton that good?" I didn't wait for an answer. I was already moving, methodically, quietly, like I'd rehearsed it. I hadn't, but you'd be surprised what you know how to do when betrayal wraps itself around your spine. Her gym bag went by the door. The extra charger from the nightstand. The set of keys I kept just in case. I didn't touch her things angrily. I wasn't in a rage. It was more like clearing out a haunted house before the new owners arrived. I sat down on the floor in the hallway, beside her favorite shoes, and waited. The second the lock turned, everything in me went still. She stepped inside like she was sneaking into someone else's life. And maybe she was. She froze when she saw the bags. But she collapsed when she saw the envelope taped to the wall, the one marked, "Open if you still think I'm stupid." She didn't know I had pictures. She didn't know I'd followed her. And she definitely didn't know I'd spoken to Trenton's wife. She didn't touch the envelope at first, just stared at it like it might explode. Her breathing had gone shallow, fast, like the room was shrinking around her. I sat on the floor, still leaning against the wall, watching her eyes do the math. The bags, the time, the name in my text, the envelope. She wasn't crying. That surprised me. Marin always cried during arguments, even small ones. This time she was just frozen. She finally turned to me and asked, "What is this?" Not "What's going on?" Not "Why are you doing this?" Just "What is this?" Like I was showing her some twisted art project. I didn't answer. I didn't move. I just stared at her and said, "Open it." She flinched like I'd raised my voice. I hadn't. My tone was dead even, almost bored. I think that's what scared her most, the calm. Her hand hovered near the envelope, but she hesitated. "Oh," she said, "I can explain." That's when I stood up. Slowly, deliberately. My knees cracked, which kind of ruined the dramatic effect, but whatever. I walked past her and into the kitchen, poured myself the last of the coffee I'd made 6 hours earlier, still cold and bitter. I leaned against the counter, took a sip, and said, "You won't need to. Everything's in there." She peeled the envelope off the wall like it was stuck to her skin. Inside were 3 photos, just 3. Not hundreds. Not a manila folder full of evidence like in movies. Just enough to make her look at the floor and stop breathing for a second. Photo 1. Her and Trenton, seated way too close at the wine bar she swore she hated. Photo 2. Them walking out, his hand low on her back. Photo 3. The kiss. Not a quick one. The kind where one person forgets they're married and the other person never cared. All taken by someone who owed me a favor. All time-stamped. All undeniable. She dropped the photos like they were on fire. Still no tears. That's when she started talking. Rapid, messy, frantic. It wasn't what it looks like. You don't understand. I was going to tell you. I was. It didn't mean anything. He kissed me. I pulled away. I was drunk. I felt disgusting after. I didn't know how to tell you. Please don't do this. I let her talk. I didn't interrupt once. Because none of that mattered. Because Trenton's wife had already told me everything. Because the affair had started 6 months ago. Because the second phone I found in her car glove box still had his contact saved as T. And because earlier that day, I had texted him, pretending to be her. And he replied. She kept talking, stringing lies like beads on a broken necklace, hoping one of them would land softly. But I wasn't even listening anymore. I was thinking about the message Trenton sent when I texted him from her hidden phone earlier that day. I'd spent 2 hours rehearsing how she would type. She used too many dots when she texted, like, "okay," instead of just "okay." She said, "ugh," a lot, and overused that upside-down smile emoji when she was deflecting something serious. I mirrored it all. Wrote him something simple, something she'd realistically send, tonight or tomorrow. "I miss you." He replied within minutes. Not even cautious. Tonight. Can't wait to taste you again. That one line stripped everything down to the bone. No denial. No misunderstanding. No room for redemption. I stared at the message for a long time. Didn't even feel anger at first. Just a weird kind of grief, like watching something valuable fall out of your hands in slow motion and knowing it's already too late to catch it. Back in the kitchen, Marin had stopped defending. Her voice was different now, smaller. She stepped toward me like I might hug her. She reached for my arm and whispered, "Please, Elle, we can fix this. You don't have to throw us away." I looked at her hand, hovering near mine, and felt this strange physical disconnect, like she wasn't real anymore. Like this person, the woman I made soup for when she had the flu, the one I surprised with sunflowers for no reason, was now just wearing her face. "You already did," I said, setting the coffee down without drinking it. "You just thought I'd be too soft to notice." She flinched at that. I think that hurt more than the photos. She sat down on the floor, right there in the middle of the hallway, beside the bags I packed. She looked up at me with that look she used to save for when we'd argue about something dumb, like forgetting to pay the gas bill or leaving wet towels on the bed. That fake vulnerability, like weaponized sadness. But this wasn't a gas bill. This was a demolition. I told her I'd spoken to Trenton's wife, that I had proof it wasn't a one-time thing, that the only reason I hadn't burned everything to the ground yet was because of one last card I hadn't played. Her face changed instantly. Her voice cracked as she asked, "What card?" I didn't answer right away. I walked down the hall, into our bedroom, opened the drawer next to the bed, and pulled out the box she told me never to touch. The one labeled old tax stuff. But it wasn't taxes. It was everything she never wanted me to see. And now that I had opened it, the affair was the least of my concerns. The moment I opened the box, I knew she never expected I would. It wasn't hidden well, bottom drawer of the nightstand, under some old receipts and expired allergy meds, but it was sealed with a strip of packing tape, like someone trying too hard to seem careless. I remember asking her about it once, maybe a year ago. "What's in there?" She didn't even hesitate. "Just old tax junk. Boring stuff." I had no reason to question it then. Now I understood why she didn't even blink when she lied. Inside were 3 envelopes, all thick, all sealed. One was marked with a year we weren't even together yet. Another with a scribbled first name I didn't recognize. But it was the third one that made my heart drop. It wasn't marked at all, just bulging at the sides, stuffed full of folded papers and something else. A flash drive. I sat on the edge of the bed with it in my hand while Marin stood in the doorway, saying nothing. She looked terrified, but not in the way someone looks when they're caught cheating. No, this was something different. This was the kind of fear that comes from knowing what you did can't be undone. When I held up the drive and said, "What's on it?" she didn't answer. She just shook her head like that might rewind the last 10 minutes. So I stood up, walked past her to the living room, plugged it into the side of my laptop, and waited. It loaded fast. No password, just a folder labeled Archives. Inside were dozens of videos. Names, dates, some recent, some old. Most were labeled with codes, like R 2019, B, or TR 2021F. And then I saw one with my name on it. Just Ellwood. My chest tightened as I opened it, expecting the worst. Maybe it was a video of me, sleeping, talking. Maybe she'd been recording me. Blackmail? Something darker? But what I saw, it wasn't a video of me. It was a video of her, sitting across from a man I'd never seen before, in a hotel room, crying. She was holding something, a folder, I think, and she kept repeating, "He doesn't know. He can't know." The audio was fuzzy, but I caught pieces. "Dangerous if it gets out. Signed under the wrong name. If Ellwood finds out, I'm done." I slammed the laptop shut. My hands were shaking now, not from anger, but from something colder. Confusion. Dread. I turned to her, standing like a statue against the doorframe. "What is this?" I asked. She just whispered, "It wasn't supposed to involve you." I didn't even know what that meant. Involve me in what? I thought I was the fool in a simple affair, the cliché betrayed husband who got outplayed by a smooth-talking coworker. But this was something else. Something layered. Secretive. Planned. I asked again, louder this time. "What the hell is this, Marin?" And that's when she sat down, buried her face in her hands, and finally said something I didn't expect. "Ellwood, it wasn't just cheating. I forged something in your name." I didn't speak right away. I just stood there staring at her like my brain had disconnected from my body. My mind kept looping the last thing she said. I forged something in your name, but the words didn't make sense. I wasn't prepared for that. I came into this thinking I'd found out she was sleeping with someone. That's what I packed the bags for. That's what the photos were about. I was bracing myself for heartbreak, maybe rage, maybe humiliation, but fraud? That wasn't even on my radar. I asked her what she meant, and she just kept saying, I didn't have a choice. It was only supposed to be temporary. Like that was some kind of comfort. She stood up slowly like she expected me to lunge at her, or yell, or break something, but I didn't. I sat down instead, like someone who suddenly doesn't trust the weight of their own legs. She finally started talking. Really talking. 6 months ago, she said she had to deal with something involving her brother. The one I never met. Lane, the ghost of the family. She always said he was off the grid, dealing with stuff, and I never pushed. That was my mistake. According to her now, he'd gotten into legal trouble, big enough that he needed cash and silence. He couldn't use his own name, couldn't apply for anything. So Marin stepped in. And by stepped in, she meant she used my identity. Not just my name, my social, my employment records, everything. She'd applied for a short-term loan in my name, had it routed through a dummy business address tied to her nonprofit. No one would notice, she said. It was going to be paid off before I ever saw it. Just a Band-Aid. Just a favor for someone who used to protect her when they were kids. Just one signature. She said she practiced it a dozen times before she got it right. That was the moment I realized how long she'd been lying. Not just to me, but as me. I felt this surge of nausea rise up through my chest. The kind you feel when the world flips and you realize you don't know the person standing 5 feet from you. I looked at her, and all I saw was calculation. Layers and layers of it. The crying, the regret, the affair. Maybe they were real, maybe not. But this part? This was something different. This was criminal. And I was inside it whether I liked it or not. I asked her how much. She paused like she didn't want to say it out loud. Then, 38,000. I laughed. Actually laughed. That weird, empty laugh you hear in hospital waiting rooms or parking lots after funerals. $38,000. In my name. And she kept kissing me goodnight like nothing was happening. She said it was under control. She said she had a plan to pay it off before the documents ever hit anything official. I asked her how, and she didn't answer. I asked again. She blinked. Then she said the quietest sentence I've ever heard in my life. I think that's why Trenton got involved. And just like that, the cheating wasn't even the worst part anymore. When she said Trenton might have been involved in paying the loan, I didn't react at first. I sat completely still, but something in me felt like it shifted. Like the ground under my feet wasn't just cracking, it had already given way, and I was just now noticing I'd been falling. I asked her what she meant. Her eyes dropped instantly. That same face she made when she broke the screen on my laptop and tried to pretend it came like that. But this wasn't a screen. This was federal. She started explaining, slowly, like she was unraveling something she'd been hoping would stay tangled. Trenton found out about the loan because she slipped up at work, left a document open on her laptop during a donor gala while he was nearby. He saw my name. He saw the routing info. He saw enough to ask questions. And Marin, being Marin, didn't lie. At least not to him. No, with him, she apparently told the truth. Or a version of it. She told him her brother was in trouble and she needed help covering it up before I found out. That's when things shifted. Trenton didn't offer her a loan. He offered her a trade. I asked what that meant. She hesitated too long. I asked again. She looked like she was about to break apart right there on the floor. Then, barely above a whisper, she said, he said he'd handle the balance if I stayed close. I remember repeating the words in my head. If I stayed close. What does that even mean? But deep down, I already knew. It wasn't just sex. It wasn't even just blackmail. It was control. Trenton had her in a grip that I couldn't see from the outside. He knew about the forged loan, and instead of reporting it or leveraging it with threats, he weaponized something far more dangerous, dependency. Marin said she tried to cut it off after a few weeks, but by then he'd made it clear. If she walked away, the loan details would find their way to my employer. Or worse, law enforcement. She kept meeting him, kept responding to his messages, because she thought it was the only way to keep the lie from exploding. She said he never hit her, never forced anything. He just hovered, pressured, manipulated, coerced. And she let it happen. Again and again. I wanted to scream. I wanted to punch holes in the drywall. But instead, I just sat there, cold and quiet, and asked the one question I hadn't allowed myself to ask yet. Did you love him? She didn't answer immediately. That told me everything. When she finally said no, I didn't believe it. Maybe she didn't either. That was when the final piece hit me. I asked how she thought this would end. If Trenton had the leverage, if he had the evidence, what was her endgame? Just keep pretending until one day it all disappeared? She looked at me, and something in her face changed. A flicker of fear again, but not about Trenton, not about me. It was something else. I think he's planning something, she said, eyes narrowing like she was trying to figure it out as she said it. He's been acting different. He asked me to meet him this weekend, somewhere off-site. Not a hotel, not the bar. A warehouse. A warehouse. I blinked. She said she thought it was just for privacy. But even as she said the word, I could hear how hollow it sounded. And then she said the sentence that finally got me off the couch and made my stomach bottom out. I think he's going to try to pin the loan on you. And just like that, this wasn't a marriage crisis anymore. It was a setup. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't even try. Maren stayed on the couch, curled up under the blanket she always used when she was sick, like guilt had physically infected her. I sat at the kitchen table in the dark, watching the ice in my glass melt into watered-down whiskey. I kept going over everything in my head, the forged loan, the videos, Trenton's manipulation, the timing of everything. The warehouse meeting was 3 nights away. Long enough to plan something, short enough to feel like the clock was mocking me. She asked me what I wanted her to do. I didn't answer. The truth was, I didn't know yet. I was angry, yes. Hurt, obviously. But somewhere beneath all that, something colder had started to bloom. I'd spent so long being the quiet husband, the overthinker, the safe place to land. But now that same patience, that same quietness, it was turning into something else. Calculation. Precision. The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in 2 years. Then I drove across town to a strip mall where no one knew my name. And I paid cash for something I never thought I'd own, a pocket voice recorder and a second phone. Nothing illegal, nothing dramatic, but enough to start taking control back. Over the next 2 days, Maren barely spoke unless I asked her something. She looked like a prisoner in her own skin, and for once, I didn't feel sorry for her. Whatever she felt, she brought it on herself. But that didn't mean I was going to let Trenton walk away untouched. He thought he had her trapped. He thought he had me clueless. He didn't realize I'd been watching everything quietly, that I'd seen the way his grip on her wasn't just physical, it was psychological. She was weak, yes, but he was a predator. And predators don't expect the quiet ones to bite back. The night before the meeting, I gave Maren instructions. Simple ones. Show up at the warehouse. Act like it's just another meetup. Don't push. Don't bring anything suspicious. And don't mention me. She looked terrified when I told her I wasn't coming with her. You want me to go alone? She asked. I nodded. You won't be, I said. And I meant it. Because while she walked through the front entrance, I would already be inside. The next day came too fast. We barely spoke on the drive over. The warehouse was in a forgotten corner of town, next to an abandoned train yard, the kind of place people disappear into without headlines. I dropped her off 2 blocks away, just like we planned, then looped around the back where the fence had collapsed. I'd been there earlier that morning and found a way in. A high window, partially cracked, easy enough to climb through with a little bruising. The place smelled like old sawdust and gasoline. I waited in the rafters, pressed against cold metal, holding the recorder in one hand and my breath in the other. I could hear everything. When Maren stepped inside, her voice shook, but she stuck to the script. I came, just like you said. Then I heard his voice. Calm, relaxed, confident. I knew you would. You're smarter than you look. For the next 5 minutes, he laid it out. He had copies of the loan documents. He had screenshots of messages. He had enough to blow both of us apart. Unless she signed over something. Something he hadn't mentioned before. A release of liability. In my name. It would clear her, leave me holding the debt, and keep him clean. And that was when Maren did something I didn't expect. She said no. Flat out. No excuses. No trembling. Just one word. No. He laughed. I could hear him walking closer. I couldn't see them from where I was, but I didn't need to. I knew that tone. It was the sound of a man who thought he couldn't lose. He said, You think your sad little husband's gonna save you? He's weak. He's done. And Marin, without skipping a beat, said, he's already here. That was my cue. The look on Trenton's face when I stepped out from behind the steel beam was exactly what I'd hoped for. That split-second panic when a man realizes he's no longer in control. He turned fast, his mouth opening like he had something rehearsed. Maybe a threat, maybe some smug deflection, but I didn't give him the chance. I tossed the phone on the ground between us. It was already recording. The light was blinking red. I've got enough, I said, stepping forward slowly. Enough to bury you if you open your mouth again. He looked down at the phone, then at Marin, then back at me. For the first time, he seemed unsure. That was all I needed. I told him everything I'd done over the last 48 hours. The email I'd sent to his company's ethics department, anonymously, with attachments. Screenshots of his threats. Copies of the forged loan. Audio clips of him coercing Marin, spliced from older voicemails and texts. Enough to get him terminated. Maybe investigated. Maybe worse. He tried to laugh it off at first, but it didn't last. He knew what I'd done was quiet, methodical, and, most importantly, legal. He didn't have leverage anymore. He had exposure. I picked up the phone again and said one last thing. I don't care if she ever forgives me. I don't care what happens to this marriage. But you? You're done playing games with people's lives. He didn't say anything after that. Just walked out of the warehouse like he was already sinking. Marin stood frozen for a moment, then collapsed against the wall, like her body had finally let go of all the lies it had been carrying. I didn't hug her. Not yet. We left separately. I told her I needed time, and I meant it. But I also told her I wasn't going to turn her in. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I'd seen enough to know she wasn't innocent, but she wasn't evil either. Just broken. Messy. Like all of us, I guess. Over the next few weeks, things slowly started to shift. Trenton lost his job. There were whispers of legal trouble, but I didn't follow it. Marin took responsibility. She called the loan company, confessed to everything, and asked what she could do to resolve it without it falling back on me. Surprisingly, they offered options, painful ones, but legal. She signed her name this time. Only hers. We didn't rush back into anything. She stayed with her sister. I stayed in the house. We talked once a week, then twice. No grand apologies. Just slow, honest conversations. And when I told her I didn't hate her, she cried harder than she had the night I found out. 6 months later, she came back home. Not like nothing happened, but because everything had. And the best part? I wasn't the same man she left behind. I was stronger now. Clearer. No longer the guy who apologized for everything, who ignored his instincts, who waited by the window with soup. I'd found something in the chaos. Not revenge, not victory, but self-respect. We still have hard days. We always will. But the difference now is this. I'm not afraid to speak, and she's not afraid to listen. And Trenton? I haven't heard his name since the day he walked out of that warehouse. Good. Let it stay that way.